and that's going to be the Commanders bounce back hand Falcons' first loss at home with a 24-16 win. The Falcons were so good at home coming into this game. They had some really, really good moments at home. They played really good football at home. They did exactly what they wanted to do at home. They're a team that struggles on the road, but them at home, they've been absolutely special. You know what I mean? They had a great game last week with the great win over Houston. The week prior, they had an exciting win, comeback win over the Green Bay Packers, and then they blew out the Carolina Panthers week one. But yesterday, you just had the feeling that the Commanders were going to come into that game and they were going to dominate. The Commanders were fresh off of having some big issues against the Bears 10 days prior to this when they played them on Thursday Night Football. And they wound up saying, you know what? We got to chin up and get into this game and get to this team early. And that's exactly what happened. Sam Howell didn't overdo it this week. He didn't even throw for 200 yards. He threw for 151 yards, had 3 touchdowns, and that's exactly what the doctor ordered. You didn't need to have a big stats game here against Atlanta. You just needed to get scores, and that's exactly what happened. But the defense had their job, very good job by the defense. Even though they allowed more yards than you would want them to, most of those yards wound up being junk yards because at the end of the day, they were up 24-3 at one point, and then they were up 24-9 at one point. So they really dominated the game as the game went along. And then, it was a late push for the Falcons, but it just wasn't enough at the end of the day. You know what I mean? The Falcons were able to get a late touchdown, make the game a little interesting in the fourth quarter, but they were dominated throughout the game. They truly were, because when you look at when Atlanta was able to get 14 unanswered, that's really what defined the whole game in a sense. And I can see that, when you look at the way these teams are going, you just knew that Atlanta was in for it tough because Atlanta really did not play a team as good as the Commanders at home when you really look at it, because the Packers are still a work in progress. Come on, the Panthers, they're hapless. And once again, the Texans are another work in progress. The Commanders have a very good offensive coordinator who was going to make sure that they had the right plays in place. He threw out all the stuff that was too hard for this offense to really deal with, and then threw in the simple stuff. And that's exactly how it looked yesterday. And that's why you got a cookie cutter win just like this one, doing things pretty easy. That's all it was. And when you look at the numbers here, you say, damn, Desmond Ridder had himself a really good game. But all in all, it still resulted in a loss. He had a 66.5 QBR. He threw for 307 yards, but threw 3 interceptions, had 2 touchdowns, and was sacked 3 times. Bijan Robinson was pretty much shut down, 37 rushing yards yesterday. And then what he had to do when it came to the passing game, he had 5 receptions, 43 yards. So all in all, he had about 80 yards in total for himself. That's not good for Bijan Robinson, who they're looking to get a quarter of the group's yardage. And crazy part is Atlanta had 402 total yards and still lost this game yesterday. They had 12 more first downs than the Commanders, but they still lost this game. Why? Because they turned over the ball too much and because their quarterback couldn't stay upright. So at the end of the day, all that didn't matter. You had 13 more minutes of time possession as well, too. Mistakes really killed the Falcons yesterday. The Commanders took advantage of it. Now they move on to being 3-3, while you have this Falcons team that moves on to 3-3 as well, too. And they're both exactly who they are. They're middling teams in the NFL, but they both have opportunities to sneak into the playoffs still. As the season goes along. But I'll keep it real with you. The Falcons are still developing something here. The Commanders kind of feel like they might have found something. They got the play caller that can put them in position to be a playoff team. I don't believe it so much with the Falcons at this point. Even though this was a team that was really attractive to win the South, it's just, no, I don't think so. I just think that it's going to be a tough ride for this team because they couldn't get it done at home the way that they've been doing it. and they just couldn't cut it on. And it seems like when Ritter has a big game throwing wise, the team is struggling, and that's not good. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it shakes out. But there's just a lot of things they need to fix in Atlanta right now. And the Commanders, good bounce back win. You know you needed it. You know that a lot of things went wrong against Chicago. So they were able to fix those things and get the win home. That's all they needed to do. They didn't need to have a great stat night. They just needed to get the win. That's it. And that's exactly what they did. All right, so we move forward. Let's go ahead and jump into our next game.